Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer for Sports Illustrated. It's great to be with you today, and I'm also pleased to be joined by my colleague. You read him all the time at si.com/NFL/Raiders, part of our incredible Raiders coverage where we write over 10 stories a day for you, covering your beloved silver and black. It's the man, the legend, the great Michael France. Michael, great to have you with us, my friend.
Great to have you in front of Raider Nation again. Talk some Raider football.
It's exciting time of year. I'll tell you, we're just a few days. Once the fourth is over, everybody that's in the NFL or works in the NFL, their whole mindset now switch. It's training camp season, so it's exciting to get it going. I want to talk to you about something, as you're well aware, with the Fourth of July coming and the celebrating of that terrific holiday, and it is a terrific one. I want to dig in on, are the Cowboys really America's team? It, I understand where that came from. I understand how they marketed it. I understand how brilliantly the Dallas Cowboys took it and ran with it. This is not a slam on Dallas, but if you're just looking at reality, it's like calling the NFL rule the Rooney rule. That should be the Al Davis rule. And Amy Trask told me that when she brought that subject up to Al, she said, "I don't care. Everyone's going to know what the Raiders have done. I don't care about, being a rule being named after me. But I want to dig in on that America's team because I think there's some interesting stuff here to dissect. Let's break it down.
Well, just go back to story, just how the Raiders that came to be as we know them today. I mean, you think about it. Al Davis, kid growing up in Brooklyn, has a dream. He once said it in an interview. He has a dream. He wants to take the great Branch Rickey strategy of the Brooklyn Dodgers. The new ways of thinking, the ingenuity, just everything about modernity. He wanted to combine that with a team that was known for hitting the home run, the deep ball, the powerful, just sheer dominance of the Yankees. Of course, he does it in football, and what's more American than, first of all, having a dream, and then he goes out west, and unlike a lot of owners. Think about it. Unlike a lot of owners, he's not coming in as a billionaire, rich guy. Already has years of business experience, businessman, buys a team. No, he grew that team from the grassroots. He's a grassroots owner, and and like a great company, like the American Dream, he kind of moved up, right? I mean, obviously, assistant coach, head coach, was a GM, eventually the owner. So there's just that pathway that's just so
And a
American.
commissioner. And a commissioner.
Yeah, commissioner of the AFL, and obviously was one of the catalysts of the AFL NFL merger that created the league we have today. And then you think about, obviously, the incredible taglines: commitment to excellence, just win, baby. And what's more American than that, right? Being excellent, going for the win, doing it hopefully through dominance. Just that's just those are just American values and ideals right there. And it's tagged to the Raiders. And another thing too is the Raiders colors. They're originally, the black and gold. Al Davis gets there, he makes them silver and black. Just his hands are just all over this Raiders, the Raiders as we know them, and he identified the iconography from the Army teams, the great Army teams of the day. And then you think about just who the Raiders were. You think about how they came to be and how they won with the players they did. They were known, and their strategy was, and Al Davis talks about it, it's well documented. They were known for just being they reclaimed players. They took in reclamation projects and they got the best out of them. Think about George Blanda, stepping in when they needed to. At like 40 years old in the '68 playoffs, and then obviously he had some comeback wins in 1970. And then you think about, John Matusak coming in, winning two Super Bowls with the Raiders. And then obviously Lyle Alzado, washed past his prime from Denver, comes in, plays a big part, has the iconic, that NFL film Super Bowl fist pump moment uh, against Washington. And then you just think about the great players on those teams too that were all linemen. Like what other franchise has, you could make an argument that the three out of four of their Mount Rushmore are all linemen with Art Shell, Gene Upshaw, and Jim Otto. What other franchise has that? And that's just such a blue collar thing right there. The big uglies as they're called, up front. And you just think about all of that. The reclamation of Jim Plunkett, comes in the league, Heisman Trophy winner, first overall pick. He's a bust. And then they get him, turn him into a two-time Super Bowl champion. And really because he fit into that system. Another thing that Al Davis established was obviously a core prototype for what our team is gonna be. It's gonna be power run game, the vertical game. Jim Plunkett fit it with his arm, came in, and he thrived. Just, the little things like that. And just you think about the personalities, how American that they had just so many different personalities. I mean, you think about it, you had the Gene Upshaws, the Art Shells of the world, and then you also had the Jim Ottos of just, you feel like Jim Otto could have played in the 30s, 40s, or 50s with how hard nosed and gritty he was. He could have played in all eras. And then, you got a quarterback leading them who's the Southerner going out west from Alabama, obviously Ken Stabler, who is just you think about Raider with the beard and the hair and just the personality, the coolest cat on the field at all times. He's a lefty, so that just makes him more unique. It's just so Raiders. Obviously, the famous quote, how much sleep do you need to go play 3 hours? Like, that's just the mentality. They were having fun out there. There's that classic 70s football movie, North Dallas 40. And obviously the team in that, and it's actually based on the novel by Peter Gent, who's a Michigan State alum, and former player. That movie, a lot of the iconography around the fictional team in that film is around the Cowboys. But when you think about it, like Mac Davis's character, the quarterback, that's a lot like Ken Stabler, and then obviously John Matuszak is actually in that film as one of the characters. But and you think about the Raiders team, and you almost think about like North Dallas 40. They should have used more of the likeness of the Raiders because that's a lot more fitting for this story. But yeah, the Raiders, iconic. I think American, obviously winning three Super Bowls, so they were successful, obviously with the just win baby, and then the extended dominance and just having a plan and always a clear direction and sense of unity. The Raiders were one of the few NFL teams, if not the only one, that has always had a distinct style of play, a distinct style of the players they want, and a direction and clear mindset on how they're going to approach things on and off the field.
One of the things I don't think, and you're a lot, you're very young, you're in your early 20s, and so that I don't think your generation appreciates about the Raiders, and I think it's another huge brick in the wall of them being the real America's team, is I don't think you promote people just because of the color of their skin or their gender. I think you have a mindset when you have an opening. I want the best person. And what really set the Raiders apart is they had the first black modern coach, first black Hispanic coach, first female team CEO, and all of it in every case. It wasn't, we're just going to hire this person so we get patted on the back. Oh, look how sensitive you are. They went out where if anybody had gotten hired at that moment, it would have been, hey, look at us. Al said, "No, I hired the best one. I'm not looking for a bunch of accolades. I did the right thing." And to me, when you look at it that way, shouldn't matter what color you are, shouldn't matter what gender you are. If the best guy is a girl, like in Amy Trask's case, or if the best guy is black or Hispanic, who cares? Just go get the best person for the job. And Al did that so far before anyone else did it. And your generation doesn't realize that as much. That's a huge deal.
Yeah, and it proved itself with the winning. Obviously, 1990, I think. Yeah, 1990, Art Shell, coach of the year, takes in the AFC Championship game. Of course, they do get thumped by a really good Jim Kelly Bills team, 51-3. But, Art Shell proved himself. He didn't just get that coach of the year award as charity for being the first black head coach. That was a good football team.
modern era first black coach. And then Tom Flores, look, I mean, look what he did as a Hispanic coach. Again, that a great coach, a Hall of Fame coach, happened to be Hispanic. It wasn't just because he was Hispanic, it was because he deserved that opportunity and got it and made the most of it.
Yeah, and I believe he was also one of the first, quarterbacks of color to get a starting job on a team too. So, yeah, you have that, and he comes in and first of all, think about the shoes Tom Flores also had to fill too, coming in after John Madden, who's the face of your franchise, just icon beyond all icons, and topping his number of Super Bowls and getting the most out of a Jim Plunkett and doing all this with all these mismatched players, these outcasts. His Hall of Fame, his Hall of Fame election was far too late. Um,
All right.
and then
All right, let's go. And I agree with you by that. It was a mockery to the NFL that he wasn't in. And until he got in, it didn't really matter who did, because if Flores didn't deserve to be in, then nobody did. All right, I want to switch gears. I want to talk about the history of the NFL, because one of the things that we know and has been said is those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes you want to repeat history, sometimes you don't want to repeat history. There is a groundswell of feeling around the Raiders that they are getting back to being the Raiders. They're back to being, they've gone through a couple decades here where it's almost been wandering in the wilderness. And all of a sudden now they're starting to get back to who they were, the toughness, the we're going to do what we want to do, we're not going to do what you think you're going to make us do, the type of player that they're getting, the head coach with the chip on his shoulder and the edge, the former player like a John Madden. There are a lot of signs of heading in that direction. It is not um coincidental. I that is the course that AP wants to take, and he's being allowed to do it. Go back with me and contrast the history to what we're seeing today, please.
Well, obviously, it was Al, as I mentioned, it was Al Davis's goal to not only have a balanced offensive attack, but especially stretch the field vertically. And he did that in the 70s with, the great Cliff Branch, who, I mean, I don't think he ever ran a slant in his life. If you, it's just always deep route, deep route, deep route. He didn't know anything but go route. Stretching the field vertically, the metaphorical, the home run, the long ball, and obviously the Raiders have that with a really good receiving core now. Devontae Adams, Trey Tucker, Jacoby Myers, obviously the two tight ends,
Michael Gallup,
Michael, exactly, Michael Gallup too, Guyton, Michael Mayer.
Hours, Mayer. Yep, you're right. They
Yep,
got it.
they got it there. They got a great offensive line. Obviously, it's not, the contextual level of what it was in the 70s, but they're building a big physical offensive line.
Hold on a second. I want to address something you just said, because I know you're young. I think they have a good offensive line with the potential to be great. You just said they are great. I'm curious about that. I want to dig in a little bit. What in the world makes you think right now that offensive line is great? I agree they have the potential, and I think they're good, but I'm stunned that you would call them great.
I That was a slippage of words. I meant to say good, obviously.
Oh, okay, okay.
Great. Just yeah. That No, that wasn't about the actual quality of performance thus far. They do have the potential to be great.
Yeah.
Good offensive line for the context of now with what they're building, and I guess you could say a great vision. Um,
Mhm.
but obviously the passing attack, think about those Raiders teams of the 70s or late 60s, 70s up to the 80s. Obviously, you had very underrated quarterbacks, like a Jim Plunkett, like a Daryl LaMonica, like a George Blanda. And right now this Raiders quarterback room, they get disrespected constantly by the media, called the weakest in the league. Gardner Minshew, journeyman quarterback. Al Davis, I have a feeling Al Davis would have loved Gardner Minshew. I mean, first of all, he's
I
got the
do.
look, he's
Yeah.
got the personality, he's got the look, and he's a journeyman. He's the typical the misfit that was never really given given a fair shake. And then same with Aiden O'Connell. I think Aiden O'Connell's another guy that people are underselling and considering a misfit. And Aiden O'Connell's also the prototype for what Al Davis liked in a quarterback too, physically. So you see those parallels from then, obviously, till now. And then let's get to the defense. Al Davis's famous quote is, "Hey, got to get the quarterback down, and he's got to go down hard." Now, obviously, in 2024, can't go down hard as much as he used to back in 1976 or 1974. But this team has rebuilt a nasty defensive front that I also think Al Davis would be proud of, especially if he knew where the league was here in 2024. Um, Obviously, Max Crosby, pick your poison of great Raiders edge rushers, like a Howie Long or obviously a Lyle Alzado. Has the character too. Max Crosby is such a Raider. I mean, the tattoos, the personality, the understated calmness that's also just so threatening and menacing to his game, and he is obviously a great man too, but just he is the intimidator when he is on the field, right? He could have fit in, I think, with any Raiders team. Um, and then obviously Christian Wilkins, big space eater who can pass rush too when he needs to. In the middle, you also obviously got Janarius Robinson and John Jenkins and Adam Butler, a lot of slept on interior defenders, and then obviously that second level Divine Diablo, and of course Robert Spillane, who you know if I were to be told Robert Spillane survived a fight with a bear, I wouldn't be shocked. Same with, obviously Tommy freaking Eichenberg too. I would be like, yeah, well, he's probably done that his whole life. Would you expect me to be surprised? And obviously that the defensive backfield, with Merrick and Epps and Jack Jones is obviously the star of that cornerback group right now. But there's a lot of hope for Bennett and Nate Hobbs. That's developing, but you see what the Raiders liked: physicality, physicality and big defensive backs. I mean, you think about it, Willie Brown was a big defensive back for his day. 6'2", about 220, 230, back in
What
the
do you mean for his
70s, which
day?
is
That
unreal.
that's a big back. That's a big corner today.
Yeah, no, that is. I mean, especially like coming in at like 225 too. It's like, whoa. And old man Willie. But yeah, just you see all these
He's
parallels,
he's
right?
such an iconic Raider that when I hear people talk about the Raiders, and I was literally sitting here when you started that discussion thinking, I'm going to have to bring Willie up. I had no clue. I mean, he is so kudos to you. There's an old Martin Sheen movie that would have said "gig for Frenchie," but anyway, Willie Brown is such an iconic Raider. He was just fun to watch. He was a guy that every play you didn't know if he was going to cover you or fist fight you. Just, and I'm not saying he went up there and beat people, but he was just so tough. He was just underrated tough because when you're only 6'2" and 220 and you're a little person like that, it's what's so funny.
Just just the irony, obviously, the sarcasm. That was good.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What's the irony and sarcasm of that?
Being a 6'2", 230-pound corner, being a little person?
Well, 220. Well, okay, you've been next to me. Is that not little for me?
Okay, for you, yes. I'm a very small human being,
Small.
so yeah.
You're a small person too. But my point was when you're a small guy like that, I mean, he's 6'2", 220, that's not big. And you think of toughness, those aren't usually top of mind people. Willie Brown, come on now. That guy, he was a assassin.
Yeah, and, that iconic pick
Lester
six.
Hayes, I mean, Jiminy Christmas, Lester Hayes just would have the stickum
Stick 'em.
dripping.
Fred Biletnikoff did too. And hey,
Uh,
obviously, you mentioned the assassin. Gotta talk about the assassin, Jack Tatum at safety.
I, I was headed there.
Oh, he'd come across the middle. He'd give you the forearm to the jaw. But and obviously, we talk about Willie Brown, that iconic shot of him running back the pick six against the Vikings in Pasadena. Just another just a great moment.
They're great ones. And there's so many great players. I have to tell you two quick stories. I'm at the Luxor the other night with my son Noah, and I go. We had just had dinner, and we were uh, doing something, and I run into the bathroom real quick. I wanted to wash my hands. And I'm washing my hands, and I hear your voice. I thought, if Frenchie had come to Vegas, he'd have told me, and I could hear my voice. I'm like, "What?" Some guy was sitting on the toilet listening to our podcast.
That's surreal.
It was so fu my son Noah just corrected him, but it was, it was so funny, and I just thought you'd get a kick out of that. I never thought we would meet while not there in a toilet.
Not there. That's,
It was
hey, man, it's a widespread, fan base and a widespread podcast, and it's nice to know they're watching it.
all right, one more question, and then we gotta get to the most serious question of the day. We have written a lot about Aidan O'Connell. They believe in Aidan O'Connell. I think it's his job to lose. No, let me rephrase that. I know it's his job to lose. But in the midst of that, I think that some people have wondered, you guys have not talked about Gardner as Gardner, and I think we've talked about Gardner, but not as much as Aidan because it's Aidan's job to lose. So let's take a minute and talk about the case for Gardner Minshew.
Well, I just go back to the fact that, $50 million a year quarterback Trevor Lawrence's stats are, ballpark with Gardner. 49 games for Gardner, 50 games for Trevor Lawrence. 59 touchdowns for Gardner, 58 touchdowns for Trevor Lawrence. 24 interceptions for Gardner, 39 interceptions for Trevor Lawrence. And obviously, I'm not saying Gardner Minshew's Trevor Lawrence. He doesn't have the size, arm, athleticism, any of that, and the ceiling possibly isn't there. What I'm saying is obviously ballpark numbers, the performance on the field, the actual production. Obviously, I wrote about it. We've talked about it. It's not as astronomical as you would think. And then when you also consider that Gardner's been in these journeyman positions, going from team to team, just called upon when they needed him, and has been able to answer. I mean, last year he pretty much played a whole season with the Colts and had them a game away from getting them into the playoffs, right? And you just think
Yep.
about the scrappy mentality I'm always talking about with Gardner. He's tough as nails and just competitive and fiery, and his personality I think also fits with this Raiders team so well. Like I said, Al Davis I think would really like Gardner Minshew because of not only his story but who he is as a person. He's just a very charismatic and cool cat, beyond the look and how he conducts himself on the field and his style of play. And I'm just, Aiden O'Connell does have the job and the confidence of the team behind him, and he should probably be the starter going forward. Obviously, it's still more competition, I'm assuming, but, I would be confident. I'd be very confident if Gardner took the reins because I almost kind of just want to see how he'd perform with this offense, this system, and this new in a team with a clear, certain vision like this. Because he's not, I don't think he's really had all that's going on with the Raiders right now as he did in Jacksonville. And then obviously he was in Philly, but Philly was Philly. He came in a few games, clean up in the back of the season when they're already made the playoffs. And then obviously the Colts. But so you take his time in Jacksonville and the Colts, did he ever really have this kind of, structure, vision, unity, stability around him and these kind of weapons too? So it's interesting. It is very interesting quarterback battle. Obviously, it's O'Connell's job to lose, and Minshew will be waiting in the wings.
So I'm angry at myself. I've been not ignoring you. I've heard every single word you said, but I've been looking for an email and I can't find it. And so I apologize to whoever wrote that to us. Please forgive me. I couldn't find your email, but one of the listeners basically said, and I'm paraphrasing because I couldn't find the email. Come on, Hondo. It's clear to everybody Frenchie is a Raider fan. Just put him on the spot. And here's the deal. You know this. Zeke, he's a Raider fan and doesn't admit, I mean, he admits it. It's what he is. You sound it. You certainly intimated. So in front of Raider Nation, at the expressed written orders of one of our listeners, Frenchie, Are you a Raider fan? Just be
Yes,
honest.
yes, I am. Yep. I
Wait a minute.
mean,
So were you lying to me or just have you become one? What was the deal?
so I'm sure as you and the listeners can gauge through me being 22 years old, my knowledge of the Raiders history. I grew up, the Raiders were one of the teams. I grew up. I was a reader growing up. I was a documentary NFL Network watcher. The Raiders were part of my developing an understanding for the NFL, understanding the history of the NFL, and falling in love with the NFL. I mean, all these NFL film shots of the Raiders and the autumn wind, the Sam Spence score with the famous poem. Um,
Mhm.
all that I can hear so clearly in my mind, and it's iconic. And it's also another reason I think it's America's team. Is what other team has an iconic song and poem like that, right? Um, but I think about all that. I think about some of my players I adored growing up, like Ken Stabler's was always one of my favorite players growing up. Just fascinated. My dad is a child of the '70s and '80s, so he has all the old football cards, and that was one of my favorites I gravitated to. I think it was the '76 card. Um, the Raiders have always played a big part in me fostering my love as a writer, as a reporter, and a lover and aficionado for football. And yeah, man, that fascination, that adoration was always here. And then of course, the fact it's my first job, right? Writing, covering the Raiders as a staff writer for Sports Illustrated. That just endears you more. So it was always there.
All right, Frenchie. I can't blame you. It's a good franchise to be a fan of. And my wife's exact words to me: if you ask him and he says yes, you better shut up because she's a member of she's a Raider Nation girl now. She or a Raiderette. She is all in on that. I said to her the other day, are you ever going to go back to buying some clothes that are pink and other colors? Because everything you're buying is silver and black now. She said, eventually.
Got the Al Davis color palette on the sideline, man.
All right. Listen, Frenchie, tell everybody where they can find you on social media.
So on Twitter, you can find me at Michael France SI. That's Michael France like the country SI.
Awesome. Check them out, Michael France. Thanks everybody for joining us again as we get ready for a great 4th of July weekend coming up. Be safe, enjoy your family, and we'll see you all. Frenchie, we'll see you next week. And next week, be full training camp mode. Excited to go at it. Talk to you then, bud.